is there order flow? There is. There's clear order flow. I mean, if there's one thing I can say about this chart is, boy, is it crystal clear, huh? Impulse, balance, impulse. Some big banker institution bought heavily here, driving price action upwards explosively on Astera. Look at that beautiful imbalance up, right? And on the sell side, you have this right here. Impulse, balance, impulse. Can everyone see the structure? Can everyone see the difference between a base candle and an impulse candle? Do you guys see the difference between those? Like, they visually look different, right? One is representing equilibrium, where buyers are buying, sellers selling, price isn't really moving, and one is representing imbalance, where there are more sellers and buyers driving price action down, or more buyers and sellers driving price action up. Can everyone see that visually, how they look very different in terms of structure? Impulsive candles versus basing candles. They don't look the same, right? So here, institutional selling, some banks sold heavily here, driving price action down. Now, if you will notice, this candle came very close to hitting that, and then it pushed back down. Now, when I have something come within a whisper of a zone and then reverse, is that a hit, guys, or should we not consider that a hit? What do you guys think? Came all the way up to there. That's how high it got. Should we consider that a hit or not?
Certain type of blood, because each blood carries a vibration, and certain blood was not.
Well, you should never go all in on any main trade, brother. We can check out Uber, we can check out Pound Yen. Yeah, I would consider that a hit. This is where we have to have a little common sense about what we're doing, right? When I'm doing chart analysis, I'm looking at the charts. Do I really know exactly, precisely to the exact penny where the bank institutions are buying and selling? No, I'm doing the best I can based on chart analysis. And most of the time, our zones, if they're set up properly, will get hit. But you can have situations where you might be off by a few pennies. And we have to take that into account. If that is the case, if we have something come within a whisper and then reverse out, we're the ones that have to say, okay, I was off by a few pennies, let me make that adjustment, right? Because that is always a possibility in this world. So I would definitely consider that a hit, and I would treat it as a hit if price retraces back up there, because that changes my entry. Let's drill down to the dailies, and this is where we're going to look for an actionable trade if there is one. We would prefer to go long if we can here in ALAB, because that's a higher probability trade since trend is up. Do we have order flow here? Well, I have this little continuation. This is an awfully big gap. That is a very big gap there on Tuesday, October 8th to Wednesday. This would be very surprising if there's not something fundamental driving that price action. Did something fundamental happen with ALAB on Tuesday, October 8th? Tuesday, October 8th. Like, I don't follow ALAB at all, but did something happen there? 1 second, Victor, I can explain that to you. What do you guys think? Does anybody know? I would be surprised if that's not fundamentally driven. That looks fundamentally driven. Maybe it's just big institutional ordering, but I would be very, very surprised if there's not something fundamental happening there. That seems unlikely that there's not something fundamental. News with NVIDIA, what, if they do some deal with it?
Back in a minute once I get to my
NVIDIA or something? I'm just saying, like, that looks fundamentally driven. Maybe I'm wrong, but Google it before you take that trade. If it isn't, either way, it's a beautiful imbalance, right? That is daily, weekly correlation, but I just would want to make sure. I would want to Google, see if something happened between Tuesday and Wednesday, October 8th to October 9th. Because if that's fundamentally driven, if that's because of some sort of news, right, some sort of news release or whatever, then I'm going to treat that level with a certain degree of caution. This is why I yellow boarded it. I'm not going to take it as a straight limit order. I would be looking for a reversal before I would take that trade. What's called a confirmation trade. So I'd want to see price retrace, come back in, hit the unfilled orders, reverse, and candle close out, and then I would see if there's a trade that's worth taking. Does that make sense? Like, I wouldn't take it on faith. On the sell side of things, I mean, now that we're down, we can see that there's structure right here, right? You can see this little impulse, balance, impulse, continuation, and you can see we've already hit it. Come back and hit it here, pop back out. And then, of course, there's here this correlating structure with that horrible, horrible gap out, which we've also already come back up and hit that level up there. So a little bit beat up there on the sell side. That's probably your most actionable trade, but we have to treat it as a confirmation because I would pretty much guarantee that there's something fundamental. Yeah, improvement of technology, sure, exactly. Something fundamental driving that price action there. So you want to be cautious with it because we can't, just by looking at the charts, tell you whether this is an institution or whether this is retail traders reacting to the news, right? Or both. Like, I can't tell you just by looking at it. If I have a major fundamental announcement, who news to say. Now, most major price action is just banks and institutions, but that could just be a reaction to the news. Cool. So that's what I got for you, brother. All right, what's next? What's the next one we were going to check out? Let's go check out Supermicro Computer. We did Tesla already, man. I'm trying to remember what our conclusion was. Does anybody remember what the conclusion was for Tesla? That was one of the early ones we did. So, what are you using ATR for, just so I know? Because when I use ATR, I use it to calculate a buffer on my stop loss. So I'm just wondering what you're trying to use it for. What's your goal with ATR? Let's remove all drawings. Let's start from scratch, guys. We'll do it together. So here I am on the monthlies for SMCI. Here I have this beautiful impulse, balance impulse, area of institutional buying. Some big banker institution bought heavily here, driving price action up. And here we have impulse, balance impulse, area of institutional selling. Some big banker institutions sold heavily here, driving price action out. And because it's area of institutional buying, I'm going to mark it green for demand. And you can see that when this bank bought here, they placed a large buy order, but they only filled some of their order before price shot away. And that's just the norm for banks, right? They're placing such large orders that they create these imbalance in order flow. So price shoots away, leaving them with unfilled orders and leaving them with an imbalance of more buyers and sellers in this green area. So when price comes back in, hits those unfilled buyers, gets pushed back out. Comes back in, hits those unfilled buyers, gets pushed back out. Comes back in, hits those unfilled buyers, gets pushed back out, right? So you can see it rejecting out of this area of institutional demand because in this green box, there are more buyers and sellers pushing price up, up, and up. On the sell side, nice area of institutional selling, impulse, balance, impulse. Nice area of imbalance, driving price action down. Some banks sold heavily, but in their case, they very likely did not fill all their sell orders here, leaving behind a high probability of sell orders sitting up here. So institutional buying, institutional selling. Let's drill down to the weeklies. Oh, so what I'll do is I'll take the ATR on whatever time frame I'm trading, right? Because it's going to be dependent on the time frame. And then depending on the size of my zone structure, I will add the difference as an additional buffer. So let me just give you an example. Let's say you had a calculated zone that was $2.20 wide, okay? This is just my example for you. But when you went and calculated the ATR for that asset, the average ATR is $2.50, okay? I would include that extra 30 cents buffer on the bottom of my stop. Does that make sense? Because I'd want to give myself that extra breathing room for the average movement of that asset. So that's what I'd be looking for. I have not looked at MSTR. So that's how I would use it, Victor. So I'd still draw a structure first, but then I would do that afterwards. All right, here I'm on the weeklies for SMCI. First thing I want to evaluate is what is my trend here on the weeklies? Is this an uptrend, a downtrend, or a sideways moving trend on SMCI, guys? You guys tell me in the chat. Up, down, or sideways? Impulse, balance, impulse. Area institutional buying right there. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, man. Definitely a downtrend. Let me unblock your comment there, Tobias. I don't know why I blocked you. Clear downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. So what does that mean for us as retail traders? Well, that means ideally we would like to go short. We'd rather trade with trend than against trend. I have a beautiful imbalance here, driving price action down. Some banks institutions sold and sold heavily here, leaving behind a high probability of unfilled orders. We did gap out, so this has been hit once, which means it's going to change our entry if price gets back up there. We have this nice area of institutional buying here, impulse, balance, impulse, and that looks like it's very closely hit as well. And then here, technically that's a reversal, right? That is technically a reversal right there. Another area of institutional buying right there, driving price action up. So institutional buying, institutional selling, and probably there's correlating structure up here, but for right now, we're going to worry about what's closest to price. Let's drill down to the dailies. This is where we're going to look for an actionable trade if there is one. Oh yeah, if we're at all-time highs, man, there's not a lot I can do there, right? Here we are on the dailies, and this is where I'm looking for an actionable trade if there is one here on SMCI. Do I have order flow here on the dailies? I do. I have that pivot, impulse, balance, impulse, area of institutional selling there, driving price action out. And that is daily weekly correlation. So as of right now, this is my most interesting level. My only negative to this level is we did have a gap out of here. Do you see how this candle closed here and this candle opened here? So there was a gap right there, which is basically like we had an impulsive candle that occurred outside of market hours. So we impulsed out and then we retraced, came back in, hit those unfilled orders, hit where? Where did we turn? Daily weekly correlation, multiple time frame correlation, right where the two zones overlap, zones on top of zones. Hit those unfilled sell orders for the first time, and more sellers and buyers. What happens? Price shoots back down. So that's where we would have liked to have taken that trade. Now, if we come back up here for a second time, now we're going to be changing the type of entry. We're going to be looking for a zone entry. And a zone entry means we're looking for a reversal within the zone before we consider taking it short, at which point we evaluate the risk-reward ratio. On the buy side, I have this nice continuation. Impulse, balance, impulse. Some big banker institution bought heavily here on SMCI, driving price action upwards explosively here. Beautiful imbalance and order flow. And that is also daily weekly correlation, zones on top of zones. That's an interesting level. It's good strength of movement, broke past the oppositional again, very little time spent. That's interesting, especially if we can get back down to where they overlap each other here at the 41.35. But even if we just get back down to this daily here at the 42.30, this is an interesting impulse here, guys. So that's what I'd be looking for SMCI, man. Potential long position here at the 42.30, or better yet, where the two zones overlap each other at 41.35, and potential zone entry here at the correlating structure at 61.12. Cool. Why is that a reversal? I'm not sure which one you're talking about, brother. This one up here? Is that the way you read? Why is this a reversal?